and welcome to this issue of Health News. We see everyday clients that come with a variety of symptoms. Some of them have chronic upset tummy, they've got runny stools, they have seen their specialists, had cameras done, stool tests done, and they were effectively told all is normal, just get on with it. We see clients with chronic sinus problems. We see clients with chronic ear problems. We see clients with eczema patches on their skin. We see clients with pains in their joints. Now, if you see a conventional doctor, he might say you need to see a skin specialist, you might need to see a bone specialist, you might need to see an ENT specialist. But all these clients can have something in common, and what is very common for these clients is that they suffer from inflammation. Now, it's not a kind of inflammation where you just take an ibuprofen, and I come to that later, what sort of bad idea that would be. It's a chronic inflammation that sits in the system. And this is very often caused by eating the wrong kinds of food. It can be caused, of course, by stress or by environmental toxins, but food is really a big trigger. Now, what is healthy eating? My clients often then tell me, oh, it can't be my food, I cook everything from scratch, everything is home cooked, I have nothing out of a package, I follow the current guidelines, I have a low-fat diet, it can't be my food. Now, the problem is a bit more complicated. It's not about eating healthy or unhealthy, it's a lot more like eating, putting petrol in a diesel car. If you do that, you have a problem. There's nothing wrong with the fuel, it can be the best quality petrol, and there's nothing wrong with your car. It's simply the wrong kind of fuel for your car. And in the same way, if you eat foods that don't work for you, you get into trouble. Now, if you look back, we are genetically still cavemen. And the cavemen ate totally different to how we eat nowadays. And if you look on some tribes in Africa who still live like the cavemen, they have considerably less, if at all, our usual problems. There's no arthritis, there's no diabetes, they don't really have eczema, they have very little cancer. But give our food to these people, they go ill, and they might well die very, very quickly as well. So, and a good idea is to go back to the roots and to eat according to the caveman. And this is what's called the paleo diet, and the paleo diet is something that I very often recommend to my clients who cannot afford any specific testing, and you get really, really good results from it. Now, if you want to find out exactly what works for you, there's food intolerance testing. Food intolerance testing is something that the NHS is not really good at. They look on allergies, so I have clients that said, oh, I had allergy testing done, it's all normal. But there are two different pathways. You can have an acute pathway, and that's like if you eat a peanut and you get a swollen face, you can't breathe, you're off to A&E, that's an acute allergic reaction. But you can have a low-grade response, and that can sometimes take hours or even days before you get symptoms. And so it's really difficult to link the two together. Now, there are different ways of testing for food intolerances. There are the tests that you can buy in the local chemist for very little money. The problem with these tests is they're not terribly reliable. If you do the same test 3 times, and BBC did a documentary on this one, you end up with 3 different results. So that's not really good. There's kinesiology, where you stick your arm out, you take a sample in your hand, and then somebody tests how much strength you have. I'm honestly too scientific to believe into that sort of technique. I think it depends a lot to do food intolerance testing with an IgG ELISA test. IgG ELISA is a test that is standardized. Every proper laboratory can do that. And there are a couple of labs who just do food intolerance testing. Now, in the UK, we have 2 different test kits available. We've got the York test, which gives you the results effectively on a piece of paper saying this you can eat, this you can't eat, and then you have to more or less get on with it. We use in our practice the ImuPro. ImuPro is the only test on the market that comes with what they call, or what I call, your genetic cookbook. So if you find out that all your favorite food items are suddenly on the no list and you don't know what to do, then you get recipes. So it's not that you have to then go back to your recipe books. Jamie Oliver does lovely stuff and think, well, but he uses this, he uses that, I can't have that, and then people get frustrated and I don't really know what to do. The ImuPro comes with your genetic recipes. They only contain foods that are not on your no list, so only positive foods. And that is a very good starting point to go on a new way of eating. I always tell my clients it's not about, oh, I can't have this and I can't have that. It's a bit more like you move to a different country, let's say you go to Singapore, and they cook differently in Singapore. You have different ingredients, you have some new ones that you're not used to, and they don't use certain ingredients that you are used to. And you like it. It's a nice diet, it has to be tasty, and it can very well be tasty. It's not about eating cardboard from now on. And very often when clients start to implement the results from the food intolerance testing, they get rid of all these chronic niggles. How I started off, I had a patient friend who had over 20 years diarrhea. She saw a gastroenterologist, she had the camera, she had all the tests there, and they just said, get on with it. Following a food intolerance test, we found out what the problem was, and she has no more diarrhea. It made a huge difference to her life. I've got a patient who had chronic sinus problems. Gone. I had a patient who had rheumatoid arthritis and was on methotrexate to treat it, and he wasn't terribly happy about the potential side effects of this drug. We found out what the problem was. He stopped eating that food group, saw me 4 weeks later, said, I'm stopping my methotrexate now because I haven't got pains anymore, I feel so good. And this is why I'm so passionate about the food intolerance testing. It's one of the best tools that we have in functional medicine, and it's a way of sort of starting from top to toe. You first start what goes into your system, and you make sure you put the right fuel in your system, you don't put the wrong fuel in your system. You can then heal your gut. Something that's called a leaky gut is often what happens if you eat the wrong kinds of food. It happens if you, look at it that way, if you have a carrot, and a carrot is like a string of pearls. And in your digestive system, we break this string of pearls down into the single pearls. First we chew it, so we make little pieces, then we put it in the stomach acid breaks it further down, and some enzymes further down break it down, and in the end you end up with little pearls. Now these pearls are small enough to fit through little pores in our gut. They're naturally there, they get absorbed, they go into the bloodstream, and they're used for food or for energy, whatever we need. Now if you're missing out on some enzymes, you have a problem. And what you need to do is you end up with little chains, and these chains are too big to fit through the pores. Now the bowel bacteria take over, they start to digest them, and they produce acid and gas. And lots of people then feel bloated after eating certain foods. But the bigger problem is the acid, because what the acid does, it starts to drill little holes into your gut. And now you've got bigger holes, bigger than the ones that are supposed to be there. And these holes are big enough for some food particles, but also for some other things to go through. And then our immune system sits on the other side of the gut wall to protect us. And it says, what's going on here? These things shouldn't really be here. Alert, alert, and it puts your body into a low-grade inflammation. And this low-grade inflammation is the root cause for all the chronic conditions that we have. So the first step, if you have any of these problems, you need to heal these holes. And the way to heal these holes, to heal the leaky gut, is to stop eating the foods that cause you problems. Now, I said in the beginning, taking ibuprofen is not a brilliant idea. What happens is that we have between our bowel cells little muscle fibers. And ever so often, they just open up a little bit, and then some juices from the inside go through to the outside. There are some receptors, and they effectively check their chemical senses, what's going on the inside of our bowels. And once they did a check, the cells close off again and everything is good. If you take an ibuprofen, this one goes open, it stays open for 4 hours. So you have, for 4 hours, leaky gut, after one single tablet or capsule of ibuprofen. And so, knowing that, I'm not a huge fan of taking that one. It's really my last resort in terms of pain relief, and certainly not a good idea to take these ones on a regular basis. Right, so that brings us to the end of today's health. If you are interested in food intolerance testing, please check our website, www.countryhealth.co.uk. There's more information there. If you want to have a quick chat with me, we always offer 15-minute free telephone consultations, so please feel free to book one of these just to see whether our services can be useful for you. Thank you very much, and enjoy the rest of the day. Bye-bye.